Hello, my name is Timothy Comstock, and thank you for taking the time to watch my senior capstone. For this project, I had the opportunity to work with Answers in Genesis to design a fresh concept to make their admissions building and process at the Ark Encounter better themed and more efficient. However, before we go on the journey of developing this concept for the future, I'd like to show you a picture. This is some of my family and some family friends at the Ark Encounter as it's being built. This is me. I've been going to the Ark Encounter even before it was open to the public, so I'm overjoyed to design something that could improve an experiential museum and organization that holds a special place in my heart. Imagine with me, you're going to visit the Ark with your family. If you're leaving from Columbus, you're driving about 2.5 hours away from here, and this is what you're going to see. This is the Ark. If you haven't had the chance to see it, I promise it's even bigger than it seems in the picture. So let's take a look at the Ark Encounter campus. Here's the Ark, and here's where you park. Between the parking lots and the museum shaped like a ship is a valley, so guests have to be taken from their cars to the Ark over half a mile away by bus. Let's zoom in. This is where I'm designing. You would enter from Highway 36 and would park your vehicle in one of the lots by following the vehicle roads that enclose the parking lot. Once you park your vehicle, these admissions buildings are where you go to get in line, board the bus, and take your journey to the Ark. When you enter, you're welcomed with this beautifully themed sign. Once again, here's the Ark. This is the admissions building that transitions you from the welcome sign, from parking, to the Ark Encounter. The building does what it needs to do, but it doesn't immerse the guests in what they came for, an experience. This is what I'll be redesigning. I was able to go down to the Ark Encounter and the Answers in Genesis design studio, and through a several-hour tour and multi-person interview, gather plenty of data of who I need to design for and exactly what they need. Let me introduce you to the two main groups my concept affects. First is the operations staff, and the second are you, the Ark guests. The primary goal of the operations staff is to guide guests to the Ark. As the admissions operations manager said when he walked me through the process, this isn't the Ark. We want to get them there as fast as we can so they can experience the park. As for the guests, they drove to the park to be immersed and engrossed. Most arrive around 9 a.m. when the park opens and leave about 5 p.m. They're making several decisions throughout the day, so while the park campus needs to be able to teach and entertain them, it also needs to be easy to go through. I distilled the findings from my user personas into 5 main points for each. For the staff, the status quo is inefficient, exposes them to the weather or blinding sun, and their work areas are cramped. They also need to check people's bags manually since there's not currently a metal detector on site, and they have to walk a little ways away to get running water on their shift, since it's housed in a separate building. As for the guest, it's hard to see the building above the cars if they're far out in the parking lot. The status quo doesn't maintain their immersion, provide them with dedicated bathrooms, since the current solution is porta-johns, and it exposes them to the elements if they have to wait outside in line. It's also difficult to find their car when leaving because the parking lot isn't broken up into zones like how it is at the Columbus Zoo. My research about the process and about the needs of the users led me to this project brief. Let me read it for you. Redesign the admission structure and surrounding area to increase efficiency, to immerse the guests in the Ark before they arrive, to provide for parents who need to change their children's diapers in a restroom if possible, and do it in such a way that it is clear as the location to board the buses that take guests to the Ark. Additionally, consider how the parking system around the admission structure would function. This concept is brand new, so I'm not just designing a building, but I'm designing how it interacts with the space around it. These design guidelines are the benchmarks I set that my concept must achieve. The design guidelines and the brief were generated in tandem. The building must protect guests from poor weather, have a dedicated bathroom, and be accessible for everyone. It has to handle varied rates and flow patterns of guests since those change depending on the time of day and the season. It needs to enable guests to find their vehicle upon exiting. And it needs to not just be the same as, but it needs to be an improvement on the status quo in terms of efficiency. It needs to be unambiguous as the place to go, be thematically appropriate, fit with the theme that's already down there, and be intriguing but secondary. I want it to interest people, but the point of this concept is transitionary. I don't want them to stop and stare and create a choke point. After understanding who's interacting with the space, I needed to understand the space itself. There are a few things to note from my site analysis. The prevailing wind direction is north-northeast. Because the parking lot is large and flat, bone-chilling wind can rush right across it. Second, the actual space the admissions building take up is much bigger than the buildings themselves, so the guests aren't in danger from passing cars when they're trying to go to the Ark. Finally, all the parking lot sections are accessed through an outer belt, which takes guests around the lot. This is something I wanted to both keep and improve on. Now that we've gathered all the information, let's dive into the beginnings of the concept. For my master plan, I strive to keep the status quo elements that were fantastic and improve on others. The building was placed lower in the parking lot so that the lot not only can hold more vehicles as the park becomes more popular, but also so that guests can flow through the middle of the parking lot and increase their speed of finding a spot. I also added a lot of green space into the park to help integrate it into the landscape and make it feel more natural. Here's where my building is placed. Another part of the site that I changed was the bus path, but we'll get to the flow of that in a moment. To come up with an accurate building, I needed to plan out the exact details of each room with my architectural program. I addressed square footage, what spaces the solution would need, and even how it would be used. After this, I could ideate on how the building functioned and looked. The primary purpose of these floor plan sketches was to consider different shapes, how those would interact, and how guests would flow through them. The best option out of all of them was the ninth, since it allows guests to circulate directly through and for the building to wrap around the roundabout that the buses use to turn around. Once I had the shape and flow, I could consider how the different rooms would interact with one another. The fifth one was the best solution. It separates the employee-only areas, the management office and break room, off to the right, while it puts the ADA accessible family restrooms on the left. The storage closet and utility rooms are also over to the left, since they're accessed far less than any other room in the building. Part of thinking through each aspect of my design was seeing how I could make the flow of guests and buses more efficient. The buses currently pull up to one of the two buildings, load up, go around the roundabout, then head back down to the Ark. I changed that, so instead, buses come up from the Ark, pull up to the building, load up, then leave. Once they leave, the next bus pulls up and the process repeats ad nauseum. Simple, quick, and efficient. As for the guest flow, instead of moving through the building and exiting out the side, my concept directs them straight through from the parking lot to the bus parked outside. All of this compiled into my final floor plan. The first thing guests encounter in the building is the weapons detection system, so that if they need to go back to their car to put something in it, they don't have to hop out of the line when they've made lots of progress in it. As for the interior queue line, the space is long and open so that staff can, in a manner of speaking, expand or contract the temporary queue lines to fit the needs of how many guests are flowing through at that particular moment. The walls slope inwards to use the architecture to funnel guests toward their destination, the bus. As I said earlier, the building's purpose is to be transitionary, not sedentary. The staff are going to move through almost every point of the space, whether that be from the weapons detection system to where the buses are, or to employee areas, or to a storage closet, or the restroom. The guest path is much more direct. Except for when they need to go and use the restroom, they flow straight through the building from the parking lot to the buses. Because of the layout of the building, and because the guests aren't scanning tickets until they get to the Ark Encounter, they're flowing through and getting to the Ark as fast as the buses can load them up. Once I figured out how the building functioned, I needed to figure out how it looked. The critical part to this is that my building needs to be intriguing enough to attract people to it, even from out in the parking lot. It also needs to maintain people's anticipation and increase their immersion. Every building needs a style, whether that's monochrome modern or stony Gothic. Some of the buildings that Answers in Genesis is constructing or already has built at the Ark Encounter have elements of Mediterranean architecture. There are lots of elements that draw inspiration from the Arabic architecture in the old Phoenician port city of Tangier, Morocco. Because this architectural style is already being used down there, Answers in Genesis asked me to design with it. I drew lots of inspiration from Moroccan riads, which are a type of open courtyard. I also wanted the style of the concept to be both reminiscent of old architecture, but fresh and modernized enough that it didn't feel incredibly out of place. My mood board was primarily for understanding that feeling that I wanted the concept to convey. My materials board also echoes the reminiscent yet fresh idea, with older textures like thick plaster and stone, along with more modern materials like colored stained glass. Once I knew the rough form and style I wanted to achieve, the challenge was actually realizing that. After lots of sketching and research, I made the bottom sketch. I knew that with the large amount of window space, intricate details, and towers with crenellations, this was what I could move forward with into 3D modeling. While it does look a bit like a European castle at the moment, that's because there's no materials. Part of my struggle when ideating was using important Arabian Moroccan elements without it looking European, since many of those elements were shared and mirrored between the two cultures. Another part of my capstone was to protect people outside from the weather. I chose to do this with a shade structure. After some sketching, I landed on the final one on the page, since it was reminiscent of my chosen architectural style and was tilted in such a way that the rain could wash right off without pooling on it. The lamppost signage was another important aspect of the project. I wanted to break the parking lot up into zones, and for that, I needed signs. In most amusement parks, those signs are hung from lampposts so that they can be easily seen from a distance. I wanted my lamppost to accomplish this function, but also to continue to fit with the theme of the concept. This is the basic lamp and sign design I chose after ideating. All of this research and ideation went into this big final concept, which took a lot longer than 40 days and 40 nights. Before I show you the end of this journey, I'd like you to, again, imagine with me. You are going to the Ark. It's about 2.5 hours away. You and your family are brimming with anticipation for your fun day at the museum. You arrive, pass by the welcome sign, and as you pull in, you see the Ark off in the distance. You gather your family and belongings and step out of the car. The building is easy to see off in the distance. You can't miss it. It's high above the cars, like a shining white jewel in the middle of a concrete sea. As you're walking, you make sure to look up to note where your car is parked. Your car might be parked in Zebra 1, or Giraffe 1, or Leopard 1. Regardless, it's easy to find once you leave. As for the building, the entire parking lot is directed towards it and funnels towards the single front entrance. However, let's say it's getting pretty busy and the line is a little long. If the sun is beating down, you and your family might hunker down with the rest of the line underneath these shade structures. The shade structures are made to have thin profiles so that they don't clutter the space visually that the building inhabits. and they go the entire length of the sidewalk. Here you can see a good view of what the collection of towers and pillars look like interacting with one another. Let's spin around to the rear of the building, though. This is what you might see if you're returning from the Ark. The styling of the arches, along with the added elements of the windows and the towers, gives guests a similar but different experience exiting the park than they got when they arrived. Now that you've gone through the line with your family, let's enter the building. The metal detector is posted right at the front entryway so that, again, if you need to go back to your car, you can do so easily. This small queue line setup is something you might see later in the day when traffic has slowed down substantially. Let's exit the line for a moment and see the bathrooms. At this point in the day, the sun might be shining through the small stained glass panels near the ceiling, while air blows through the trees, bushes, and finally, the large arched openings in the walls. The family bathroom isn't crazy and does everything it needs to do while staying classy and completely ADA accessible. It even has a changing table installed with a small theme table to set the diaper bag on. I didn't want the bathroom to be insanely detailed, but I still wanted it to feel like part of the building instead of a standard public bathroom that you could buy the parts from a typical industrial supplier. This led me to design an LED rose window light for the bathroom, along with decorative stone arches to surround it and a pier to support the ceiling. The decision to theme the bathroom a bit also influenced how I approached the employee-only areas. Speaking of those, let's head that way. As we head that way, take note of how the large, open interior room directs people through and around it, along with having the space to have a pretty large line inside. I wanted the employee areas to be easy to access, but still separate from the rest of the main building so that guests don't have the opportunity to accidentally wander in there. First, let's go through the door, down the hallway, and into the break room. The break room has a lot of similar elements to outside, from color and material choices to nods to the architectural style, to make it feel like it's part of the same space without it being overwhelming. While the building wouldn't be overwhelming to a guest, I wanted the detailing inside the break room to be pared down because, unlike a guest, an employee is going to see this every single day. I wanted to give employees the same experience guests got as well. Too often, employees are forgotten in building layout and decoration, and as a result, can feel crammed away. I didn't want them to have a bland, featureless, boring white room, but I also wanted the space to give them the opportunity to visually rest. As for the management office, it shares windows with the exterior so the manager can have an idea of what's going on outside. However, the glass is frosted so that he has some privacy. There's plenty of space for meetings with coworkers, space to get work done, and overall, it's an open and clean office without feeling sterile. This continues to the ceiling elements, which help to make the room that much more special and experiential. Thank you for visiting the Ark Encounter with me today. Let's wrap it up. My project brief was centered around increasing efficiency, better immersing the guests, providing for people who need a dedicated bathroom, making the building able to attract people to it, and considering how the space around it would need to function. My design guidelines centered around three primary things: protecting and providing for the users, improving efficiency, and creating an impactful and appropriate theme. To protect guests from poor weather, besides my building protecting them from the rain, the wind, the sun, and allowing lots of air circulation, I designed shade structures that would function if the sun's out or if it's hidden behind the clouds. I made a dedicated bathroom that's not overwhelming and arranged every space that's not just ADA accessible, but is ADA comfortable. Whether you're a guest or a member of the staff, there's room to spare. To improve efficiency, I made the interior queue line such that it could flex, with the line expanding and contracting as necessary, while maintaining the direction of guests passing straight through. I designed lampposts to fit with the architectural style and provide wayfinding, and arranged the path of bus travel in such a way that it's monodirectional, crisp, and quick. As for guiding people to the building, the bright white stucco on the outside and the three tall towers cause the building to stick out from anywhere in the parking lot. The entire concept, even outside the building, fits with the Arabic Moroccan style while being fresh enough for a modern audience, and not overloading with too many details to distract from its nature as a transitionary space. The building brings people to it, but still propels them through. All this is done while maintaining their immersion and helping to create experiences that will impact them after they head home. Thank you.